Welcome to the High Income Business Writing Podcast, helping you propel your writing business to a whole new level. And now, here's your host, Ed Gandia.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the High Income Business Writing Podcast, the number one podcast for business writers and copywriters who want to earn more and less time doing work they love for better clients. With over 1.3 million downloads from listeners just like you across 101 countries. Life can often feel like a never-ending hustle, especially when you're feeling like you're working harder than ever before, but getting poorer and poorer results. Deadlines loom, responsibilities pile up, the bills just keep coming. It's easy to get swept up in the daily grind and just feel like you're constantly in the middle of a storm that just won't let up. Before you know it, the love you once had for your work, for your business starts to dim, and frustration and burnout start taking hold. And they leave you with a persistent feeling that you're merely just going through the motions. Sound familiar? I know it has for me. I've felt this way a few times before over the years. And if it does resonate, I think you're really going to appreciate today's episode. My guest is my mentor, teacher, and good friend, Peleg Top. I've known Peleg for 14 years now. He's been on the podcast a couple of times before. He's had a huge influence in my life and in my business. And he's the person who encouraged me many years ago to become a coach. I've learned a ton from him over these past 14 years, and much of that has inevitably seeped into the work that I do and continues to kind of find its way into my own work with clients. I wanted to bring Peleg on the show again because what I've been seeing in our business over just the past year or so really troubles me. I'm seeing a level of frustration, burnout, doubt, fear, and uncertainty among creative professionals that I haven't seen in a really long time. So many solo creative professionals are just feeling rudderless. They're feeling uninspired. They're tired. They're deeply in burnout territory, and they want to change. They don't want to be there. They're trying their best to improve their situation. They're trying to reinvent themselves, create something new, but they feel plagued. I guess that's the best word to describe it. They feel plagued with a lack of clarity, fear, and self-doubt. Peleg believes that these symptoms are a clear sign that your inner muse is inaccessible. Your inner muse is locked up in a prison cell made of routine, of stress, self-doubt. And in order to break through and create the change we want, we must unleash this inner muse so we can tap into our core and unlimited creative potential. And I really couldn't agree more with that thinking. So in this conversation, we dive into this idea. We talk about what this inner muse is all about and how we can start embracing it to open up pathways to new ideas, to emotional healing, and a profound sense of fulfillment, both in our professional and our personal lives. One more thing I wanted to mention. A few months ago, Peleg and I felt called to do something about the challenges that we're seeing among creative professionals, the ones I've been talking about here. We wanted to do something beyond a podcast episode. Now, don't get me wrong, you're going to get a lot out of listening to this conversation, but we also wanted to co-lead a retreat, and we've made that decision and we're moving forward. And we're doing it this September in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The land of enchantment. It's a beautiful place, and it's something I am super, super excited about. We're calling it the Unleash Your Inner Muse Retreat. This is a 5-day event where we're going to work together to help you rediscover and nurture your creative spirit, to unlock your full creative potential and craft a compelling vision for your personal and professional life. You're going to reconnect with a profound joy and a level of freedom that will make you wonder how you ever lost touch with this divine spark within you. And by the end of our journey, you're going to walk away with practical tools to reignite your creativity, a renewed sense of motivation and direction, and a process that nourishes your authentic self and reconnects you to a creative energy you haven't felt in a long time. So, if what we share in this episode resonates with you, I invite you to listen to the end where we talk for a couple of minutes about this event. I am also including a link with all the details in the show notes, or you can just go straight there by visiting unleashyourinnermuse.com. So, with that, here's my conversation with my good friend, Peleg Top. I hope you enjoy it. All right, Peleg, it's great to have you here, my friend.
It's good to be here, Ed.
You often talk about creative free spirit. You talk about your inner muse. And I'm wondering if you can maybe share a little bit about this concept, what that is, and how we can start tapping into that part of ourselves to access all this creativity, love, this boundless energy that can really transform our lives and our work for the better.
So the concept of inner muse refers to this source of inspiration and creativity that lives in each one of us. I like to think of our inner muse as this guiding spirit or this voice that encourages and influences our creative expression. It's the purest part of our creative self. It's free from pressure, it's free from judgment, it's free from constraints. And that part of ourselves, that muse, if we don't nurture that part of ourselves and give her the space to live in us, we will very quickly meet ourselves in a space of disconnection from our creativity, or that burnout or the block, So when we connect with that inner muse, it ensures that our creativity, our creative output is authentic. It's true to who we really are, to our unique voice, to our unique perspective. It's this authenticity is what sets us apart as creative professionals from one another, right?
Those moments when we look at something we just did and stare at it in amazement and say, I don't know where that came from. I still have no idea where that came from.
Yeah.
It wasn't
magic.
That wasn't just me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've all felt that many times before, but you just described what had to have happened for you to have accessed that. You were in a different state. You were connected to that inner muse.
Right. That inner muse is alive. Now, when that muse is alive and healthy and is informing my creativity, it also promotes my emotional and mental well-being. So when I'm engaging with my inner muse, it can be a deeply fulfilling experience. It allows me to process and express my emotion through my creative work, which can be incredibly therapeutic. Now, most of us in creative professions, we access our creativity, and oftentimes we do it very well, but ultimately it's for the sake of pleasing a client. It's for the sake of solving a problem that will ultimately bring a result to our client. That's all good. That's blessed. But that doesn't really tap into our creativity in a way that expresses who we really are. It's not who we truly are. We're channeling our artistry and our creative abilities in this process of supporting a client in the work. But we've also abandoned ourselves in that process and who we are as artists, who we are as creatives. And if we don't have a practice where we are on a regular basis meeting that part of ourselves, right, that muse is just going to fall asleep. That muse is going to say, well, he doesn't really need me. He doesn't really care. Clearly he's too busy with using his creativity for these projects and these clients. So I'm just gonna check out for a while. And sometimes that reservoir of creativity that we have in us can last us for a few years, sometimes a few decades, but there will come a point where there's this sense of, I can speak for myself, that this sense of emptiness, that I have nothing more to draw from. Especially, I remember in the times when I was doing creative work as a designer, I started feeling like I'm kind of repeating myself with every project. I'm kind of like doing the same thing, going through the same process. The results are starting to kind of feel the same. I'm kind of going on autopilot. I don't really care. I know I'm good at it. So I'm just going to whip something out, and I'm just going to solve the problem, submit the work. The client's going to be happy. I got my paycheck. But there's still a part of me that says, I'm not really that emotionally satisfied from the work that I've done. Right. So being in relationship with our inner muse, being in a regular dialogue, it sharpens our intuition, which is invaluable in making decisions in our life. So this heightened sense of intuition, it can guide us in making choices that align to our vision and our goals, right? So we forget how important our intuition is as creative people. And that was for me. My intuition was completely asleep when I found myself in that burnout space. And beginning to work with my intuition and beginning to use my intuitions and my feelings as fuel for my creative expression changed everything. And making that into a practice. So it's something that, just like I go exercise or do a regular practice of meditation or yoga or whatever it is to support my physical body, my mental health, there's also the ongoing practice of my emotional being, my intuitive being, giving that part of myself a space to express itself, because that expression, that activity of expressing myself, that is turning on that energy, that source that we're talking about that we want to tap into.
You talk a lot about the difference between doing and being. And, you and I have worked together for a number of years. You know this better than most people, but I have generated quite a bit of success in my career over 30 plus years, just being really good at the doing. And in fact, a big part of what I teach and what I coach people on has to do with the doing. More and more, however, I have come to the realization, not just in my own work as a coach, but me as a person, as a professional, as a human, that real success, real happiness comes from also focusing on the being. And I think, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this. I think sometimes you have to hit rock bottom, or we have to go through a period of significant burnout to suddenly realize you have to meet yourself differently, to suddenly realize that, another tactic or another strategy or another, more effort, more doing is not necessarily the answer, at least to get you out of where you are right now from rock bottom. So can you talk a little bit about this idea that sometimes, very often, when you have hit rock bottom, or you feel like you've hit rock bottom, or you're close to that, you're burnt out, the questions you ask yourself really matter. And questions around what can I do are probably the wrong kinds of questions. And if you agree with that, Peleg, what kind of questions should you be asking yourself instead? Let's talk about questions.
You bring up a really important aspect of being human, the idea of doing versus being. We live in a country that celebrates the doing, celebrates the success. We grow up with that model and we create a mindset that promotes doing, doing, doing. And I don't know about you, but over the last 10 years or so, maybe even 20 years or so, it feels like the world is getting faster and faster. We continue to look for hacks to save more time, to be more efficient, to get more done in less time, to be more productive, and along the way, when we are consumed with all the doing, it's very easy for us to forget who we are, because the doing begins to define who we are. And when the doing loses its essence, loses its power, because we have neglected who we are, that part of ourselves will signal to us, hey, there's something wrong here. You're disconnected and misaligned from your essence, from who you really are. All the doing that you're doing may bring you results that you want or not, but what's it costing you? So the idea is that we have become the kind of people who know who we are based on what we do. And the shift that needs to happen is that we need to begin to really know who we are more. We need to be in touch with our essence, with our way of being. And when we become in alignment with that way of being, with who we are, the doing that will come out of that will most likely be very different, because it will be directed and inspired by who we really are and what we really want.
That's very good. And again, I just wanted to go a little deeper there because I feel so many of us have been living in a world of doing for so long that some of these ideas and concepts seem to resonate at some level, but can still feel a little fuzzy because they're not as concrete as the doing, as the checking items off, as the effort that we're so used to expending. Uh, in terms of daily practice, I want to come back to something you were discussing a little earlier. You talked about how you have a daily practice. Tell me a little bit more about what some of those practices might look like. What elements could you include in a practice like that in order to really tap into your creative free spirit and your inner muse?
That practice is an ever evolving and ever changing practice. I know for myself that I can get bored really easily if I do the same thing over and over again, even if it's something that I love to do. So I have a variety of things that I do that support who I am as an artist, support who I am at my core, at my being. Activities and practices and rituals that allow me to express myself. Now, that self-expression may not necessarily ever see the public light of day. It's between me, myself, and I. And those practices, they came out of many years of playing and experimenting and exploring. So there's a variety of things that I do. but there's few things that are consistent, that no matter where I'm at in my life, I know that I can always rely on this practice to help me connect to myself. For me, it's journaling, is writing, is sitting down with a blank journal book and just writing what I think, allowing my emotions to express themselves on the page. That is a constant practice that I do almost daily, and have been doing that for decades. It keeps me sane. I mean, I have bookshelves and bookshelves of journal books that I've collected over the years. But that meaning of myself is the idea that we want to think about. So it may look very differently for every person, but there's something really powerful about journaling, about sitting down and writing without the inner critic in place, without the inner editor in place. Something very healing about that. So that's the significant part of my practice that is almost daily. Aside from that, there is meditation, daily meditation, even if it's 20 minutes, a couple times a day, to sit down and just quiet and make that a priority, make that part of the practice. You'll be amazed to see the level of calmness that can bring into your life.
And not to get into the weeds, but with meditation, just something as a simple mindfulness meditation, focusing on breathing, focusing on, just something that's
there's so many modalities of meditation. I practice a couple. Breath work is a form of meditation that I do. Transcendental meditation is another form of meditation that I practice. Again, for me, there's a fluidity in the actual method that I use, but the idea is still in place. The idea of quieting my mind at least once a day, every day, is essential to keep me connected to myself and my way of being.
Mm-hmm.
So there's journaling, there's meditation, and there's self-expression. Art is one of the most healing practices that we can engage in. So when I began to include art in my mentoring work with people, it changed everything, because there's something incredibly powerful in just making art, especially when it's intuitive art, especially when it's art that is just me expressing myself, not me trying to create a masterpiece or trying to draw something or paint something for the sake of presenting it somewhere. It's just art for the sake of making art. It's the practice itself. It's art that I'm not so attached to. Just like my journal pages, I'm not attached to those pages. I'm not attached to the writing. It's just kind of this. It's what keeps the creativity in flow, right? So
is that what you mean by intuitive? Intuitive meaning whatever comes out,
yeah, intuitive
without any
is out of my gut, out of my core of my being. It's unedited. It's completely free. It's not judged. It's just creation and process.
Yeah, it's not to post on Instagram. This is for you. This is to
exactly
creative self-expression.
And maybe sometimes I'll make something, it'll be so amazing and beautiful. I'll go, wow, you know what? I want to show this to the world. It's not that I don't give myself permission to do that, but that's not the intention. I don't go into the practice with, I want to create a piece that I can actually post on Instagram. No.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 95% of the art that I make never sees the light of day outside of my studio, because it's my medicine. So if we want to tap into that flow of creativity and keep that muse alive and healthy, we have to do some work. We have to engage in a practice. So, I teach many practices to the students who come to work with me. And ultimately, they have the choices of either using some of the practices that I teach them or develop their own practices that feel right for them. And that's what's most important here. It's to develop a way for you to express yourself on an ongoing basis that nourishes you. That act of self-expression is nourishing. It is energy that you are feeding yourself, that then you can take out into the world and apply it to your professional self, to your social self, to the other places in your life where you need to tap into your creativity. It starts there. It starts with the relationship that you have with your muse.
I'm curious to get your reaction to this objection. Peleg, it's easy for you to say you're an artist. I'm not an artist. I don't know. I'm a writer. I'm a marketing professional. I can't even draw a stick figure. Sounds like I need to maybe take some lessons or maybe just skip that part of the process. What would you say to that?
I would say that you might want to redefine artist for yourself. Your definition of being an artist right now is limited because at the end of the day, we're all artists in one way or another. Now, if I'm defining myself, being an artist means I paint or I draw or I sculpt, and that's not something that I do, that I'm not an artist, well, you've just limited yourself. What does it mean to be an artist? Let me ask you that. What does it mean to you to be an artist?
Well, for me, it's just expressing your emotions would be one of them in some sort of way. And it doesn't have to be the first thing that comes to mind for me is visual art, but creating a rhythm. I play drums. So for instance, and just doesn't even have to be a drum. I could take a bucket and just expressing a new rhythm and see how I can play with the plastic and the different aspects of the bucket. And then that sounds good. It's like, you know what? I think I'm going to record that. And then I'm going to layer that and GarageBand with something else, another beat with a different part of that bucket. I mean, even something as simple as that is art. And it doesn't even need to be visual or auditory. It could be expressing a new idea, in writing. It could be um, putting things together that were never put together in that way before. I could take junk mail and I could take some scissors out and some glue, and I could create either a collage or some sort of weird sculpture with that just for fun. And because I have no agenda and no specified outcome, that could actually turn out to be pretty cool. And I might surprise myself. To me, those are all ideas in my mind of creative self-expression of art. It doesn't, have you noticed that, by the way, every kindergartner is an artist?
Exactly.
I've never heard a kindergartner say,
we all start as artists. We all
have you
start
ever heard a
artists.
kindergartner say, oh yeah, sorry, I'm not really an artist. Yeah,
Right.
you do that, but I that's not my thing, or I haven't had any training. No, you tell them to draw you something and they will do it.
Yeah. Part of being an artist is dancing with our muse as adults, because we've abandoned that part of ourselves when we were children. Because becoming an adult comes with responsibilities, and it becomes with commitments, and life can get in the way, right? So oftentimes, the I think when we think of the idea of being an artist in the world, and we look at people who are artists, those are the kind of people who have basically given their self-expression a priority in life, right? Everything else comes around that. So I'm not saying that is the path for everyone, is to lean into being an artist professionally and moving through the world as someone who is devoting themselves to art. But we have to remember that we are all artists, that art is the vehicle that helps us express who we are. You know, art is the vehicle that helps us interpret the world. And ultimately, art heals us. We forget that art heals us, right? When you think about little kids, for example, you have kids, you've probably been through this before in your life.
Mm-hmm.
When a kid is completely kind of like out of sorts and they're in a stressful place and they're crying and they're lost, one of the things that I've seen many parents do is, here, sit down and draw something. Here's some crayons and some paper. And as soon as the kid starts drawing, what happens? They calm down.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden, they're connected to themselves again. Art helps them get there. Why have we abandoned that practice? I don't know. But one of my missions in life is to help people connect to that part of themselves where they can sit down and make art that heals them, art that helps them express something, whether it's joy or pain or whatever is going on in my internal world. Once I engage in an activity that expresses that, and it could be a painting, it could be a poem, it could be a song, it could be whatever, right? That's the beauty of art, that there's so many manifestations of it in the world. Thank God we have that. You know, life would be pretty boring if art didn't exist. Think about it. Life would be pretty boring if art didn't exist. I oftentimes think about this idea of, why do people go to museums to look at art? You know, what's really the core of the reason that people go to museum to look at art? The experience. Can you think of an experience that you've had when you went to a museum and you saw, let's say, a painting that moved you, right? Piece of art that moved you. You could feel something by looking at this painting. You could feel what the artist was feeling, right? That's a healing moment.
It really is.
People go to museums because art heals, because we look at art and it makes us look at ourselves. It makes us reflect on life. It makes us ask questions. It makes us feel something. And we live in a world where we are hungry to feel, right? So why not create that experience for ourselves? We have the ability. We have the tools. But oftentimes, fear gets in the way, and our inner critic gets in the way. And we are addicted to our doing in our life, that we forgot what it means to actually express ourselves and feel something and create something out of nothing that is an expression of who we are. And that's a beautiful process when that happens.
There is you mentioned the inner critic. I'm curious for your take on the role of the inner critic on two things that I'm seeing a lot of right now: self-doubt and lack of direction and clarity. What role is the inner critic playing in those states of mind?
Well, the inner critic is fed by fear. So if I am meeting myself in a general space of fear in my life, if I'm operating from that space, if that's where my mindset is, it's just going to feed my inner critic even more. And my inner critic, even though his job is to protect me, right? When he gets a little bit too much power and too much control, he stops me from doing anything that I want to do. He's very sneaky, and he will make me believe that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy, that I'm not capable. Um, so it's a powerful force that lives within us. And unless we learn to tame that part of ourselves, first of all, recognize what does that look like, right? What is the sneaky way that my inner critic actually gets in the way of me actually pursuing something that I'm inspired to do in my life, right? So that inner critic energy is it creates the resistance in us, and that resistance keeps us stuck.
If the inner critic is really monopolizing the conversation, a feeling of lacking clarity, lacking direction, being frustrated, being anxious, it creates really a vicious cycle because the inner critic feeds on that.
Exactly.
When the
It
inner
feeds
critic
it.
feeds on that, it gets stronger, which furthers
Yeah.
and exacerbates those emotions.
Yeah.
So, I want to kind of start tying this together because I love where we ended up here. Um, if you're not careful, that's going to be the dominant force in your life. And if that's going to keep you from tapping into your higher self, from having access to your inner muse,
Yeah.
creative free
Absolutely.
spirit. And look, you taught me this. You can't get rid of your inner critic. Your inner critic has a very important role to
You don't
play.
want to.
You
You
don't
don't
want
want to
to.
get rid of it. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's actually
So
it's impossible
it's
to
impossible.
actually annihilate the inner critic. We need the inner critic to a degree, because our inner critic, when we have a healthy relationship with the inner critic, it becomes our advisor,
Mm-hmm.
not our disciplinarian, right? It it comes up when we are at moments where we need to make a decision or a choice in life. The inner critic will be that voice that says, "Wait, maybe take a second look," or "Are you sure this is for you?" It's more of an advisor. So when I have a healthy relationship with my inner critic, I will listen to him and I will take his advice, because that advice will ultimately help me become a better version of myself. It's not the voice that stops me in my tracks and limits me, right? So even before, if we are meeting ourselves in a place where our inner critic is really loud and we can feel that energy, that stuck energy in us, well, we're not really going to be able to access that creative free spirit, that muse that we're talking about, easily when that energy is active in us to that degree. So the first step in this process is, let's begin to tame that inner critic. And that's a process that we go through. And how do we use it? How do we do that? Well, I've discovered that the best path to get there is art. Art is the medicine.
Interesting, because one of the many things that I've gotten from an art practice has been, and this is completely unexpected for me, was the willingness to take more chances, the ability to not be married to a specific outcome, and
Right.
making art for the sake of making art.
Right.
And it's such a powerful metaphor, and it's really bled into so many aspects of my life, because before that it was about creating a product, and it was frustrating if it didn't meet the specifications, for example.
Right.
And we live so much of our lives that way, that there was no room in my life for creating something just for the fun of it and taking chances and not being married to, I got this kind of vision in my head of what I want to create, and then it ends up not meeting that and then being frustrated. No, many times, one thing you taught me is it's going to take you down a totally separate path that you never expected, and just being okay with that. In fact, even finding the joy in that process, that is a beautiful thing that has positively impacted me way beyond the art. The art is the art is just a vehicle.
It's the vehicle. Exactly.
It's not the it's not the end, and that has been really, really powerful for me. I can't tell you how important and impactful it's been. Um,
Well, the inner critic will stifle our curiosity.
yeah,
And it's going to be a really challenging life if we have lost our sense of curiosity, because curiosity will take us out into the world to explore, to reinvent. And when that part of ourselves, if we don't have access to our curiosity, right, we're not going to have the motivation or the desire to engage in that process, to engage in in a creative practice. So it's a big deal. It's a big
it
deal.
is.
Yeah.
It is. So I mean, Pelly, we can talk all afternoon about this.
Yeah.
This is a fascinating topic, but as we wrap up, I want to make sure listeners not only have a lot to think about here, because we've unpacked a lot, but I'm curious as to what might be a good, simple next step that listeners could take toward a more inspired and creatively fulfilling life today. Right? Got all these ideas, all these thoughts. Where would be a good place to start? A simple next step.
Well, I would say create a new creative practice for yourself, something that fulfills you. So devote 15 to 30 minutes a day where you engage in an activity purely for the joy of it, without the pressure of the expectations or the outcome. I mean, whether it's doodling or journaling or playing an instrument or experimenting with photography or crafting, whatever it is, the key is to allow yourself to explore freely and express whatever comes up without judgment. Just get into a space. Again, it could be 15 to 20 to 30 minutes a day where you're simply getting in touch with that part of yourself. Now, it might be a very challenging experience, because I can guarantee you will meet your inner critic along the way. As you're
Oh yeah.
drawing, your inner critic will say, "Oh, this sucks. Oh, this looks terrible. You're not an artist." Keep going anyway. Don't pay attention to that voice. Because what you want to do is you want to engage in a practice that begins to wake up your curious self. So become curious about what you're creating as you are creating, and just see what happens. But ultimately, there's a commitment to yourself that you're going to have to make, whether you like it or not. The muse doesn't just show up. The muse comes with the action, right? So waking up the muse means that I have to bring effort into it, into the process. And by engaging in some kind of a practice, the muse will begin to wake up. And that's when the adventure begins.
I think it's a beautiful step to take, and it's 15, 20 minutes a day is not a big ask. And I think could be, in fact, I know it can be the start of really a different journey for people. I know it has for me. So you and I are about to lead a retreat in September. I love what we're calling it. I wish I would have come up with this name. It was your idea, unleash your inner muse, and
It's
I'd
exactly what
like
we're going to
to.
do.
Yeah,
We're you know,
totally.
we're going to spend 5 days in engaging in activities and practices that are going to um, quiet our inner critic. I mean, first, the inner critic will absolutely come alive because we're going to be challenging people with some creative activities that are new and are different. So, new and different is definitely something that wakes up our inner critic. But the difference in this experience is that A, you're not alone. B, you have guidance. C, you are in a safe, judgment free container where you get to play, where you get to express yourself in ways you've never expressed yourself, and you get to make art. And that practice alone, over the course of 5 days, the goal is when we leave this retreat, the muse is alive. She's awake. She's ready to play, right? The question is what happens when you get home, right? So it's not like come in, wake up your muse, unleash that power in you, and then go back to your old life and do nothing about it. No, our hope is that this retreat can serve as a Kickstarter for something new in your life, so that you leave this retreat with some new practices, some new rituals, some new insights, ideas that you can begin to integrate into your life to keep that creative free energy flowing so that you begin to create your life from that place. That's in a nutshell what we're going to be doing.
Yeah. No, this is good because I suspect that many people haven't been to a retreat. And I think you just gave us a really good idea of what to expect, what the vibe is going to be. Who would you say this is really for? Who's the ideal person for this experience?
Anyone who wants to get better in touch with who they are, and anyone who feels that they're a little stuck, they're in that road to burnout, they need some clarity in life, they want answers to questions that they've been in for a while, come into this experience and wake something up in yourself that will begin to inform you, will begin to guide you. We each have an internal guidance system. It's called our emotions. It's called our feelings. So this experience will be an opportunity to actually feel your feelings and express them in a way that heals you, right? And from that place, anything's possible, really, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be waking up something in us that has been waiting to emerge. And there's incredible joy in that space, an incredible high energy in that space that is a fertile ground to creating anything we desire.
Well, I am very excited to be part of this. I will be teaching a bit during this retreat, leading some discussions, and I really can't wait. The setting is absolutely beautiful. You showed me some pictures, and I thought this is perfect.
Well, Santa Fe, we're in the land of enchantment here. We're going to be working at this beautiful studio space that will facilitate the process that we want to be in.
That's
we're
important.
Surrounded by nature. Nature is a big part of this experience. And I mean, the big idea is to invite people to take themselves out of their everyday, out of the bubble that they're in, out of the thinking that they're in, and create an experience for them where they get to play again, where they get to express themselves in new ways, where they get to actually witness other people on their journey. It's incredible growth that can happen just by witnessing other people's journey as well. The idea is for this retreat has actually been percolating for many, many years. And I've done segments of this retreat in different variations. And this is kind of like the first time that this this program is created in a much more solidified way. So I'm really excited of entering into this space with a group of people that we'll be in and taking them on a journey. Really, this is what it's going to be. It's a journey.
It's going to be wonderful. I want to make sure listeners have the website where they can learn more. It's unleashyourinnermuse.com. And the dates are September 10th through the 14th, as Peleg mentioned, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. All the details are on that website. So if this is resonating with you, I invite you to check it out. Any questions, reach out to me. And, I hope to see some of you apply. There is an application process. We want to make sure that we have the right set of people there who are ready for this work, because it's important that we have the right environment and the right vibe there. So there is a short application process, but check it out if this is resonating with you. And Peleg, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. This has been
thanks.
Been a great talk.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate being with you, and I thank you for your devotion and dedication to this inner work. I look forward to our retreat in Santa Fe and to unleashing our inner muse together.
Thanks again, Peleg. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And just a quick reminder to grab your free copy of my latest book, Earn More in Less Time: The Proven Mindset, Strategies, and Actions to Prosper as a Freelance Writer. You can get your free copy at b2blauncher.com, where you will also find the detailed show notes to this and all my other episodes. Enjoy and have a great day.